So you've gone out and bought yourself a new camera and you've unboxed it, you've read through the manual, you've seen what it can do, and then you've taken it out and you've took a few photos of your friends and your family and the local environment and maybe a few birds and trees and so on, and then you've kind of just thought, well, I'll get it back out later, and that never happens. And what you do is you end up leaving it in a cupboard in probably its original box, and you only get it out on high days and holidays, or if you decide to go on a vacation. And then you find out this DSLR is quite big and it's hard to pack, and you've basically decided just to use your phone instead. And that to me seems like a bit of a waste of a very expensive piece of kit. Now, DSLRs and mirrorless cameras are fairly expensive purchases, and it's not something you would have bought on a whim. You've probably thought about it for a while, and you've probably then gone out and bought a few lenses and a few other bits like bounce flashes and maybe a tripod, maybe a few extra memory cards, and you've got all of this kit sitting there. So today really is just about giving you inspiration. Get out and about, take your camera out on a day, whether it's sunny or overcast, and if you've got a camera that's weatherproof, then use it in the rain as well. Basically have some fun with it, and this is what I did today. And on the way I took a few shots with the camera I was using, basically kind of random shots really, and sometimes they're the best ones. Nothing really staged for most of it, and it ranged from photographs of them setting their cameras up and basically seeing what their viewfinder can see, through to headshots and kind of pseudo portrait shots as well. And that was probably the only bit where there was some semblance of kind of posing, but most of them were not. Even on the headshots, most of them I caught when the person was pretty much unawares about what they were doing, and I think they make the best pictures. And then we moved on to street scenes and kept trying to capture what's going on in the streets with people, what they're doing and so on, and then moving on to things like scenes, views, vistas, pictures of people in the park, and anything that kind of caught my eye at the time. Now, most of these photographs, in fact all of these photographs, are the ones I took on the day. They weren't meant to be particularly technical, they weren't meant to be particularly staged or anything like that. They're just meant to be photographs that you would take out and about to maybe improve your skills, get an eye for new things and so on. And that's what it's all about. It's about having a bit of fun. And the next video will be the shots that the boys took on their cameras, and to see what they thought of things, see how they saw the world from their perspective, and to see what kind of photographs they actually took. So let's take a look at the day, and I hope it inspires you. Today we're just out and about on a bit of a challenge, taking photographs in the kind of slightly grey and overcast skies. So what we're doing is we're taking pictures using our cameras. Brendan's got his HS, his FinePix bridge camera. Marcus in the background is setting up the tripod, he's got his FinePix. Austin has his Minolta and FinePix camera with him, so they're going to try and see what they can actually do today. And then over in the distance we have Alec Perch taking pictures using another bridge camera. There's a bit of a mix and match of cameras, so it's just a bit of a challenge to see what we come up with at the end of the day. Okay, so first thing we do after we get set up is just do a bit of a trial run. We're going to do some shots of the people who are taking part in this day today with their cameras. And the first one starts off with Alec, who is just setting up his camera ready to take a shot across the river. Then the next one is Austin, who is just basically range finding his camera, followed by Brendan, who is doing exactly the same. Now, they are using basically bridge cameras, and what they're doing is just having a bit of fun, and that's what this day is really all about, and that's why we're actually out and about today with rather grey and overcast skies. So now I'm taking the photographs on a Nikon, which is a D33, which is a 24 megapixel camera, and I'm using a full frame lens, and that's because I actually prefer this lens being manual on this camera, and there's a good reason for that as we come into some of the photographs a little later on and I'll explain all about. But it does take amazing pictures which have a lot of nice gentle color washing or very kind of random blurring in the background, which kind of makes people in the foreground or whatever your subject is stand out a little more. And I prefer this lens for this. It's not really any sharper than an APS-C lens, which is, this is an APS-C camera, but it's just the one I prefer, and it seems to place the image kind of more over a larger center part of the actual sensor than a standard APS-C lens. Well, that's what I found anyway. Okay, so we've done some setups and then we're moving on to just headshots. Basically what you might find is portrait shots, just general headshots as well. And we basically started with Marcus, and Marcus here, as you can see, is just leaning up against a tree. And again, that lens, which is basically designed for a full frame camera, really comes into show here because the background is almost very green matte rather than the kind of random shades of green that you might get on a field or in grass or trees in the background, which makes the pictures really rather pleasing. And then we come to the same tree but a little bit tighter in on the trunk itself, and again another headshot, this time of Alec, and basically using two separate poses. And as you can see again, the background almost looks like a green matte, which is great for outdoor work because it looks like you're kind of maybe in a studio because of the kind of consistency of the green there. And again, it's using this telephoto lens, which is actually designed for a bigger sensor, and using it with a slight zoom, so you're kind of looking at about sort of a 100 to 120 mil kind of zoom in, just to then change the aperture on the lens or the f-stop, and it also then changes the ISO, and I just manually tweak the ISO to get this effect. And now we come to Brendan. Again, similar tree, and in fact it's the same tree, and again the same fill behind and roughly the same settings, but this time I just zoomed out slightly to about sort of 90 and then just left the rest of the settings the same from the previous photograph, and this is the result. And again, it's quite a nice pleasing photograph, and it does work very, very well, especially if you're taking something like a headshot or a portrait outside. Okay, so then we're moving on to basically full or almost full body shots, and this time it's a picture of Brendan leaning up against a tree, the same tree, followed by Marcus as well, who's also joining me on either side of the tree. And just having the tree relatively central in the picture for most of the time actually gives a bit of a focal point, and then you can see that the two people are literally either side of the tree, which gives it a nice bit of symmetry there. So again, I only brought the single camera and a single lens, or the single make camera and a single lens with me, just to kind of enjoy the day rather than to get too technical with various lenses and so on. And that's what this was all about. It's just literally go out and have a bit of fun and see what you can do. Next up is some action shots of basically the boys jumping off of a bar, off of a fence. And as you can see, you know, if you've set a quick enough shutter speed, then what will happen is you'll basically find that you'll be able to capture movement. Now the shutter speed has to be relatively fast, and also you don't need to zoom in a lot, because then again that's going to darken things down and make the camera struggle a lot more than basically having a lens that's fairly wide. And this is what it was here. I think this was only a 70mm zoom setting, and basically with a relatively quick shutter speed. Now every camera is different, so you're probably best just doing what most people would do, is just do it a few times and practice and play with it. As you can see here, it does work out if you just take your time and have some fun with your camera. And so far it's been quite a nice day, even though the weather said it wasn't going to be very nice at all. And this image caught my eye. Basically, from where I was standing, it kind of looked like a watercolour. It was basically a mum and a daughter sitting out enjoying the sun in and amongst all of the flowers and plants, and the mum looks like she was taking a selfie on her phone. And because of this, it kind of captured my attention, and I took this from a relatively long distance away. So I was roughly at about a 200mm zoom, which would have been roughly 300 on an APS-C camera with a zoom lens, which was designed for a full frame camera at 300mm. So I got fairly close from quite a distance away, and because of that, and because of the shutter speed being relatively quick, and also taking the ISO up slightly, this is the effect that I got. And I'm really pleased with this one, because this one looks really good, and you don't need to see the faces, because it's the image of the kind of watercolor effect is what I was actually after on this one. So this one's still part of the street scenes, and basically you can see what looks like two friends having fun. Of basically something's happened which is very funny, and just at that moment I was able to capture that frame or that image. And as you can see, I used slightly different settings on the camera, and it was more a case of using the full length of the zoom on the lens to get this shot, because I was quite a distance away at the time. I just kind of spotted this subject out of the corner of my eye, and due to the camera being set on a high shutter speed, it was able to reel off about 4 frames to capture this image. So again, it's kind of a bit of a right place at the right time for this one. The next two shots are shots of scenery, such as this church spire here, and this kind of old-fashioned kind of river scene here. And it's nice to get something other than kind of people and street scenes. And, you know, you mix and match your photography, and it keeps things interesting. Now, speaking of interesting, this image kind of grabbed me because I was walking past, and I kind of saw this sign saying tango on the side of a bicycle. So I kind of put the camera down and found a shot between the bike racks, and this is what it was. And it turns out a very pleasing, colourful shot, but this time it was a very, very close shot, or a very tight shot of part of the rack, to be able to kind of make the sign stand out. So the whole focus was really on the sign and the few bikes leading up to that sign, and everything else kind of gently fades away into a colourful blur into the background. Now this image here is another basically static image, but it was almost set to give you a feeling of how dreadful or ominous the weather was looking, with the kind of grey sky set against a blue bike and a green field. And it kind of works, it kind of makes the bike stand out on its own, and it also gives kind of a sense of foreboding because of the greyness of the sky. And again, this was quite a wide shot for an APS-C camera, and it seems to work very, very well. And it's a very interesting picture, and it's the same as the next shot, which is of the two bikes which are set against a kind of different background. You've got the blue of the bike popping in on the right hand side, followed by the vibrant red against the greens and the blues of the sky. So it sets a very different scene to the overall greyness of the previous shot. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it gave you a little bit of inspiration about getting out and about in the countryside or your town or your city or your local area with your camera. And it doesn't have to be the brightest day, the sunniest day like this wasn't. It was fairly overcast and it was quite cloudy at times with lots of kind of rain being threatened, but it really didn't stop people getting out and about, as you can probably see from these pictures. And I hope it gave you a little bit of an idea of the kind of photographs you can take just by capturing the moment more than anything, and the kind of different types of photographs you can take, from headshots to street views to pictures of things and objects. And you know, it all kinds of adds to the enjoyment of being a photographer. So get your camera out of that closet, out of that cupboard, out of that drawer, take it out, go out on a pedal bike if you've got one, or go for a walk with the dog and just take some pictures. And you never know, you might find that you've got one of those 1 in a million shots that maybe you would never have gotten if you didn't take the camera out, and you would never have gotten on a phone or a camera phone. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Please stay tuned for the next one. Please subscribe. Please hit the like button if you like it, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Bye bye.